So let me get right back to it. What were we talking about?
Cultural competence, unconscious
What else?
bias.
And there's something else. I'm gonna look at Twitter here and kind of get caught up. Ed's back with us too.
I'm here.
So you look at Twitter too.
I'm totally scanning it.
Okay.
I'm ahead of you.
Well,
So I have just a quick comment on cultural competence. That I had a patient last week who is white, and she went to the doctor, and the fellow and the attending specialist both spoke a foreign language, and it was the same language, and they were speaking to each other in the same foreign language. And it was a good experience for me as a white doctor with my white patient, understanding what it is like when you cannot understand what your physician is sharing with you.
what else is on your mind? I feel like we started a lot of topics that we didn't have a lot of time to kind of expand on. Anything else on your mind going back to our conversation or anything else?
Sure. Well, we talked a little bit about racial residential segregation and how important segregation is in a city like St. Louis and how it's related to wealth inequalities and really about it shapes the resources and access that people have. So that's something we mentioned over there in the corner.
And how that and do you see that playing into tonight's topic at large? Don't be shy, we're on the web.
I mean, everything from, access to care is the first thing that comes to mind, right? If there's not a physician that you can easily get access to, that really cripples your ability to even treat diseases you're interested in caring for. When I've been lucky enough to visit the Saturday clinic, I remember I had a patient a few weeks ago who came in who needed a refill on his blood pressure medication. You ask him, he was the most upstanding gentleman. He really cared about his health. He had this crushing problem of high blood pressure, and he got these unbelievable headaches, but the last doctor gave him a prescription for only 3 months, and he ran out, and he didn't have a doctor to go to, and there wasn't a doctor around him, and he couldn't get that care. So this was an example of a guy who wanted health care. He was smart, he knew what he needed, but there just wasn't anyone to give it to him. And
I don't know if it was you or somebody brought up the idea too that having time to go to the doctor every 3 months is just not realistic.
Yeah, the system, generally speaking, is not, the patient needs to accommodate to the system, not the other way around. And if the patient can't accommodate to the system, you have a humongous barrier in place that, certainly for our patient population, the Latino community, is sometimes extremely difficult to overcome.
What are you scanning?
There's such talk about mental health. This was such a, I'm going to say, I'm surprised that really became almost, I think, what pushed us over the edge in trending tonight. This talk about mental health and where does cultural, stigma and where does the access to good mental health in these segregated communities? So I think that's really resonating with a lot of people.
Well, there's trouble accessing good mental health, period.
Period, yeah.
Right?
You're right.
So then
It makes
compound it.
Right.
And in our country, just in terms of mental health parity, we don't have the access to good mental health services.
Right.
And so then if you lay on top of that environmental toxins, environmental stress, financial stress, whatever other sort of dynamics you want, it makes it even more difficult, I think, to get the mental health care you need.
Should we talk a little bit more about what can be done? What can we be doing? What is being done? Any hope? Any light at the end of the tunnel here?
There's a ton of work around trying to understand stigma, trying to understand why people don't access mental health services. There's a lot of work in that area, even trying to figure out, so a little known disparity, that's not disparity, is that when you look at, say, African Americans and whites have greater rates of depression than blacks. Whereas every other physical health outcome you can think of, it's the exact opposite. So it doesn't make any sense. And if mental health is associated with stress and poverty and things like that, it really doesn't make any sense. So it starts to beg the question of what's really going on with mental health in, say, African Americans. And so mental health is also related to physical health outcomes as well. So you think about something like diabetes, for instance. So there's a strong connection between diabetes and depression. So some people start to think, well, maybe we need to understand the physical health outcome and let that be, whether it be a foray into talking about mental health, something as simple as that, but also trying to figure out, well, are people starting to self-treat with other things like high fat, high salt, high calorie foods that make you feel better, but could be protecting your mental health, but at what? The expense of your physical health.
Wow.
There,
I didn't.